David Bailey, welcome to Radical Wealth Plan.
Thank you for having me.
This is part 2, and we're going to keep it super focused because if you want to know all about David Bailey's history, which is super cool, and how he got into real estate and into real estate investing, very, very cool. Look for the David Bailey episode. You'll get all of that. And because of that, we're going to do none of that here, which I know is music to your ears because you're on purpose.
I love that.
So the specific reason that I wanted you to come back on and talk to us again is that I know that you do a fabulous job of evaluating properties, and that over time you've built a phenomenal portfolio. And then you told me, hey, you know what? I just got a couple of new properties, or you were looking for them. And then I'm like, okay, you're being active in this market, which is weird. And a lot of investors are staying out of it. And that's when I said, we got to have you back on because I want the analysis and what are you looking for and
okay.
So tell me sort of where are you maybe in your real estate journey and.
Okay. Currently I operate I have a management company and a family office that we currently have we just purchased our 21st building.
Wow.
And we purchased two weeks ago simultaneously, and I'll get into that story in a moment. But throughout the years, starting in about 1989, I've acquired buildings based on if I perceive there to be value. And I don't really pay too much attention to what's going on outside. Some of my best deals were made at the worst times in the history of LA. Recession, riots, what was the third one we had? Earthquake. Yeah, 94, 95, 96, people wouldn't touch LA. And I was buying a lot of it. And that's where I made a huge amount of money doing that. And then I never sell. Agents call me all the time. And one of the things is I'm not interested in selling. I'm always interested in buying if I see opportunity.
I'm so glad that you started out with that because the number, I do like an ask me anything, and the number of times, even after I've already done it like 5 times, is now a good time to buy or should I wait? And I always say, I give this one anecdote where I bumped into a guy at yoga. He knows I'm in real estate, and he's like, oh, I was looking at a deal coincidentally with one of our agents. And I'm like, oh, who? And they told me the agent. I'm like, wow, that's a fabulous agent. So that's great. You're in good shape. Oh, and she was showing me a property, and I'm like, oh, are you going to buy it or whatever? And he said to me, well, my CPA told me not to buy it. I go, oh, well, fair enough. Did he look at the deal?
Yeah.
And he said, no, he didn't look at the deal. It's just not a good time to buy. And I just stopped him right there. I said, you know what? Here's one thing. I promise you, your CPA is giving you bad advice. Now, I'm not telling you should buy this property, because if you ask me if you should buy the property, I would say, how would I know? I haven't looked at the deal. I know for sure your CPA is giving you bad advice because you cannot give good advice without looking at the property.
Absolutely.
And people make terrible buys when people think it's a good time to buy, and people make good buys at those times, and people make terrible buys and good buys when people say it's a bad time.
Well, there's actually, the old Warren Buffett saying, when there's blood in the streets, you buy the streets.
Sure.
And that is, and one of my buildings is, I call my COVID building.
Right.
One thing I have learned through the years, it's important, regardless of what's going on in market conditions, for you to get out and look at the properties and not just look at something that crosses your desk or your email or whatnot. So when COVID hit in early 2020, prior to it hitting, there was a building that came on the market in Las Vegas. And I was one of 3 people, I think, who had looked at it and walked some of the units. Anyway, we ended up in a multiple offer situation. It was going to go several $100,000 over asking, somewhere in the mid 5s, and COVID hit. And the sellers, was a multi-generational asset, 12 grandkids, they wanted their money.
Yep.
And because I had walked every unit, and because I know that kind of building, they came back to me and said, well, what would you buy it for? With no contingencies. And the only people who were equipped to make that kind of offer were the 3 of us that had actually walked the property. And so I was confident enough and came in with I think I took $1 million off the price. And I closed the deal, and it was one of the, right during COVID, horrible time to buy. I bought it. It's been a terrifically performing asset.
And just for context, how many units?
That was 12.
Okay. So, for example, I can do very easy math and know that if you got $1 million off the price and you have 12 units, you can do a lot of damage control with $1 million. You could fix a lot of stuff for $1 million.
Yeah, it went from being a modest return to an excellent return.
Yes. And the no contingencies piece, because they know, hey, we want to make sure this guy closes. We want to get into a deal with somebody we know that's not going to close and somebody that's not going to start negotiating once we're in escrow.
Yeah, one of the benefits I have of my being in the business so long and having a multitude of properties, when I'm looking at properties, first thing I do is I say, what building is this similar to that I currently own? Because based on the year built, the flat pitched roof, blah blah blah, and I can generally find 2 or 3 of my current portfolio that pretty well match up, and so I can go through a whole. I can pretty much tell you what the expenses are going to run, what it's going to need, and it's simple. It's a simple thing for me. It's kind of like I can blink and tell you if the building's going to work or not.
And that's the sort of experience that you get by actually going out there and doing it. I'm gonna have a guest on that's way more junior to you in terms of real estate investing, but she had the sort of gumption to like take that, just get in and do it. And when she got in and did it, then she found out all the things that she did wrong. And it was a rental out. It was a rental out in Palm Springs, which I know you know the area very well. And she went around and she looked at what things were renting for and what they had that she didn't have. Well, why can't I get this rent that I thought? She didn't get the rent that she thought she could get. Why not? Let me look around. Let me see. Oh, they're getting the rent that I want. Let me go tour that property. Let me see what that's about. And then, she messed around with it for about a year and a half. And she fixed a couple of things, but she realized she was never going to get there. But she had that year and a half experience. She then sold that property. Very, very, very modest win. So she just basically broke even by the time you take
closing fees.
Yeah, closing fees and everything. But she sold it when she saw another property that she knew it wasn't there, but she knew it had the bones that she could change a few things and she could get where she wants to be. And once she did that, now she has a property that she's had for 7 years and then another one, and it's really paying all of her expenses. So
she learned. But I have a question there. Did she actually live in Palm Springs prior to buying that property?
No.
See, that's one of the challenges.
That's the problem.
Because I'm a big proponent of this. For years, people have told me, oh, you've got to diversify and get out of LA. And every time I've gotten out of LA, I've gotten burned. Because you cannot know a market by just visiting it. You have to live and breathe it. And then you can go and you know the difference between, I'll give an example in Palm Springs. There's a street called West Stevens. Well, West Stevens, the rents I think are 30% below any other block because it's just a main artery, kind of has a bad name, and you wouldn't know that visiting it. Visiting it, you would go, it looks just like it does 2 blocks from here, but it's not. And you only know that if you had local expertise.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to get into it because we're focusing on David, but I have, the 3 rules that allowed me to never lose money in a real estate investment. And the first one was buy where you know. And
Absolutely.
Our mutual friend, I won't out him totally, but our mutual friend David, who has is a very successful businessman, has a bunch of property, called me one time and said, I've had it with multifamily. I just lost my shirt. And I literally said to him, like, how do you lose money? And because he's a smart guy. How do you lose money in a multifamily? I didn't say it to be a jerk. I wanted to actually know.
Yeah.
And he had an analyst that was like, had a spreadsheet with, 200 entries and was a professional analyst and all this sort of thing. And they had analyzed it to death. And I could do better on the back of an envelope knowing the area. He had bought it where he didn't know. And that's what caused that loss.
And when he bought, I'll tell you as an example, the last 10 years of appreciation as of today have been wiped out. We are back to prices that we haven't seen since 2015.
Wow.
So prices peaked around 2019 and 20 as interest rates went to 0, cap rates followed down to the low 3s. And I have 4 friends who were expanding at that exact time and buying buildings 150 million, 120 million, and their equity and investors' money is gone.
Yes.
And they literally, a couple of them going to have to bring cash to the refi because they're in a floating rate and they're stuck.
Right.
And all the equity is gone.
So what's going to happen is people are listening to this and they're going to go, wait a minute, I'm calling BS on what they just said, because those people that bought in 2019, 2020, they bought at the wrong time. So there has to be a right time and a wrong time.
No, in these particular cases, it's not cool. Where these people made the mistake is they were doing value adds.
Right.
And in doing value adds, they took floating rate financing on $100 million loans.
Yes.
Assuming after they did their remodel in 18 months, interest rates would be somewhat where they were when they purchased the property.
Right.
No one predicted that interest rates were going to just take off while they had a floating rate. And that's where they got burned. They could have hedged their investment if they had gone right into fixed rate financing, going out 10 years, which rides you through any market, maintains your cash flow, whereas your equity is going up and down. You know, the price of commercial real estate, my apartment buildings, for instance, and a house. Right now, houses and apartment buildings are jumping around the same way the stock market is. You just can't see it. And you only see it when a transaction closes.
Right.
And then you can go, oh, at that one point, that value was there. And so people are typically valuing real estate through the rearview mirror. What's the last trade?
Sure.
Unlike the stock market or the bond market, which tells you a price every second, 24/7.
Mm-hmm. But there was something important that you said that I'm going to highlight. And that was, you said on a 10-year financing, that's really going to help you ride through all the markets. So that you feel like 10 years is kind of the sweet spot for safety on the financing?
Well, yeah, I would recommend if you really want to hedge your risk. Now, the way I do it is a little different. I maintain pretty good cash reserves, and I'm very much into very low leverage.
Very conservative.
Yeah, I don't think my leverage on my overall portfolio exceeds 17 or 20%.
Wow.
It's
That's
crazy.
amazing.
I own a lot of buildings free and clear.
Uh-huh.
And we'll get into the deal I just closed, and I'll tell you how I structured it.
For sure.
And so I'm very conservative there. So if rates were to turn on me and say I had a 5-year product, because the sweet spot right now is 5-year fix. At those loans, at any point, I can pay them off.
Right.
If
you needed to.
If I needed to. So if rates took off, I could just pay the loan off.
Right. So you can afford essentially to bite on that lower interest rate because you know that you're not going to get stuck on the other side.
I always look out. Like I have loans that are going to be rolling in 2028 and 29 that are ranging from 1.6% to 3.25%.
Right.
And I know I'm going to get hit on those rates. So at that time, I'll make a decision whether or not I want to pay some of those off or roll some.
Right. Sure, that makes perfect sense. And if I were giving somebody else advice, even on a home purchase, people that get a 30-year mortgage, I mean, what number of people actually stay in a house for 30 years? So it doesn't really make sense. And yet, when I was staring at an interest rate of 3% for my house at 30-year money, I'm like, I don't care what my own advice is. I'm grabbing that at 30 years. And then I have 2 commercial properties that were the same thing. They're in the low, either 4 or close to just 4 flat. I'd have to ask AJ, but it was a 30-year, it was US Bank, and they had like a 30-year 4%.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, you're one of the reasons why our real estate market is currently frozen.
I know why you say that.
You and everyone else that took these low interest rate loans are not moving.
No, that's right. That's right. Yeah, there's no way. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I had a hiccup at the end, as often happens with financing, and I was super mad about it. And I really was at 2 7/8 for 30 years. Yeah. And then, I have this hiccup last minute, that was always in the documents. They should have seen it. If they didn't see it why are they going to see it day 29?
Yeah.
Now they're seeing it, right? And now they're telling me, day 29, there's this problem, and I pitched a fit and I got it into 3.5 30-year. And I'm going to tell you something. Yeah. When you got 2.78 locked on a I did put a lot down, but still we're out in LA. It's a big number. And then you move that from 2 7/8 to 3.5. That's
absolutely.
A huge jump.
But I mean, I also will own my mistakes. When rates were really, really low, one of my primary house, my rate is 1.6% interest only. And I took a 7-year fixed. 10 would have been a quarter point higher.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was so cheap at the moment. I'm like, oh, what the hell? I'll refi it or pay it off. And I wouldn't pay the extra quarter point. Hindsight's 2020. Now I look at myself and go, oh, what a fool. I should have taken at least the 10-year.
Yeah. Because you look sort of historically, and that's why I went 30 years. I looked historically. I could have had, a half a point less or a quarter point less if I went 15 years. I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
I can afford that extra quarter point. And I just know I'll just ride this thing.
Yeah. So we all make mistakes. I mean, we all do things that, in hindsight is good or bad. You never know.
Hindsight. Yeah, for sure. Sorry. So another mutual friend who will remain, actually I should say his first name, another mutual friend, Ben, looked at my portfolio and said, you're crazy for holding these properties for so long because, you can 1031 them and not, because if you buy a value add, you know what you're doing, which I did on the way in, and then you add the value, there's no more value to add. You are essentially, by holding, you're essentially buying, at a much lower cap rate. Because if you could sell at a 4 cap, that's going to jack the price up. And so, and he showed me an example of one that he just 1030, I forget how many times, so many times, but it was in the course of about 20 years. Maybe he 1031'd it like 5 times, I don't know. And he started out with this, $700,000 purchase in New York City, and now it's 20 million or some crazy thing. So are you?
Well, that's one way to do things.
Right.
Personally, I buy legacy assets.
Yeah.
I only buy a building that I want to own forever. And
I love it.
And additionally, with the new big, beautiful bill, which I cannot stand saying that name, there's a thing called bonus depreciation.
Yes.
And so when you start 1031ing everything, you're lowering your basis on the acquiring property. And so you're not necessarily maximizing the depreciation. And your tax rate, your real estate property taxes are going to be based on that new purchase price.
That's right.
So while, yes, you can shelter the gains perpetually and grow your assets, no question, it's definitely a play. It isn't what I choose to do. I'm very much excited about the bonus depreciation because that allows you to take anything that has less than a 27.5-year useful life all in year 1.
Right.
And so, for instance, as an example, I bought a Malibu beach house back in 21 for $7 million. And I think I ended up with a cost seg write-off of about $1.7 million because I used it as a rental.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's the actual structure of the house that has to go on 27.5 years, and everything else can be turned into components. Yeah. Whether cabinets, flooring, doors, windows, all of it, and all of that you can take in year 1 now. Right. Which is crazy. And you know what? Here's the thing. I don't make the laws, but we might as well.
You know what? I don't make them, and I don't cheat on my taxes. I pay my taxes, but I will use every legal method possible to pay the littlest tax that I have to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And real estate is, I have a client that makes, doesn't have a long history of making a lot of money. Very smart guy. And now he's making a bunch of money, and his neighbor has been has been making a lot of money for a long time, and he's telling my friend, like, oh yeah, I don't pay any taxes because I shelter it all through real estate, and it is such a tax advantage.
The U.S. tax code is completely discriminatory against W-2 earners.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have several friends that make between $1 million and $2 million W-2, and when you actually run the numbers of what they take home after paying taxes, Social Security, and everything else that comes out of their paychecks, it's shocking. Right. And so being in real estate in itself is one of the most advantageous places you can be.
Absolutely. And I know this is a national podcast, and I know that people will think these numbers are crazy when you say that. And one of my closest friends, once his legal career really took off, and this is already a while ago, and he was like, I'm making $500,000 a year, and that is so much money. And he's living in New York City. I'm like, hey, let's do the math. I shouldn't have done this to him because it was the biggest bummer ever. I'm like, let's do the math. So okay, so you 500 grand, and you know, you're a fancy lawyer at a fancy firm, and so now you're at 250, right? By the time now you're at 250, and you know, what's your mortgage payment or what's your rent? You don't want to live like a bum. It's costs a lot of money in New York City. And then, you know, he likes to wear you can't be a fancy lawyer without fancy clothes. And next thing you know, I'm like, if you could save $5,000 a year, you'd be lucky.
Yeah. Well, I was talking just 2 days ago. A friend of mine called me. He's a partner at a major law firm, international law firm, actually. And he was actually disclosing, he was looking for a house in LA. He lives in San Francisco currently. And he rents in San Francisco. And he said, well, this is what I make. And it was $1.3 million as a partner in a major law firm.
That's everybody else going, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And we ran the numbers on him buying a house over in Beverlywood or a Chevy at Hills. And we backed into it, and he can barely afford a $2.5 million house with 10% down. His law firm provides some special financing, but once you add in taxes, insurance, everything all in there, it was like, whoa.
And imagine if you're making $1.3 million, which we all consider a boatload of money, and your law firm is not providing special financing. That's a very rare instance. Now you're just like a regular guy making $1.3 million. Now you really can't afford a house.
Well, when I say special financing, they do a thing where you don't have the PMI with 10% down. They were somehow supplementing it or whatever. So, you know, the PMI. But when I started walking through the numbers, and I, quite frankly, was shocked on the phone. I was like, oh my God, this, because I don't necessarily look at numbers that way. I usually have to run the numbers for someone else. And it was like, I just thought to myself,
frightening.
Thank God I'm in real estate.
Right. And that's what this podcast is about. I mean, it is, you know, the wealth that you build over time. And I know you can do it very safely. You know, again, if you're taking a conservative approach, like you're saying, you're not going to buy something. Okay, let's get to the buy.
Well, I want to interject something right now. In my entire life, and I belong to several peer-to-peer organizations with some very wealthy people, going all the way up to billionaires. I have never, ever had a home run. I have never been the person that bought NVIDIA at 68 cents and it's currently trading at 140, 50, 70 or 80. And I see it, all my friends, when they do their presentations and show me, I'm like, what the hell? You paid $6,000 for the NVIDIA? It's worth $1.6 million? I have never gotten any of that luck. All I have ever had in my 40 years in this business has been base hits after base hit after base hit. Mm-hmm.
That is such an important lesson to learn. And I have never had a home run. And I almost had a home run until my accountant referred me to a financial advisor, and they looked at my portfolio, and I was all in Facebook, and there were a couple of other ones. So many years ago, and he just said, your portfolio is ridiculous because it's so unbalanced. Now, I should have been smart enough to say, like, yeah, but I have all this money in real estate, so you're not looking at my you're only looking at my stock portfolio, which is really a fraction of my net worth. So if I have 30% of it in Facebook, which I had, and I wouldn't sell it all the way down to where he wanted me to sell it, but I would have had millions of extra dollars on that. So I sold out of the one thing that I could have had.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And no home runs. Yeah. And built a lot of wealth over time.
And so I think that's really, really important, because when I talk to, particularly when I talk to younger people, and I'll show them the return on something, and they'll go, that's nice, but it's not a lot. And they're all looking at home runs. And I think it's because of the Kardashians and everything else with social media. They're just looking for that, I'm going to knock it out of the park, and what's my exit strategy? Exit strategy? I never had an exit strategy. I'll be working till the day I die.
Maybe you'll be surprised. My memory is because some things hit me and I'll remember them forever. And you were telling me about riding around in the car with a very successful friend of yours. I think he's retired or partially retired. And he had a 15 or 16-year-old son in the back seat. And you're like, oh, so what's your plan? What are you thinking about? And part of the kid's plan was, well, I'm looking for my exit strategy.
It's so true. Yeah. He was 15
years old.
And he was talking about his exit strategy. Yeah. And we're looking at each other like, oh my God. By the way, I think retirement is overrated. I get up every day and get excited that I'm going to be doing something different. And that's the other thing about real estate, which I can't emphasize enough. Every day is different. You never know what's going to come up or what you're going to get to deal with. And so it's incredibly stimulating.
And, you know, I think that I use AI more than anybody else I know, but that's a small pool of people. And I'm deep into it. I'm using things to make sure I'm at the cutting edge of it and all these sorts of things. I think it's going to be such a massive disruptor in so many areas. We haven't even seen the tip of it. And guess what? People still need a place to live.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. A couple of years, this is another little, I'm going to sidetrack, but it's real estate related. I'm from the Bay Area.
Right.
And everyone a couple of years ago, generally the attitude was, oh, San Francisco is dead.
Yeah.
Because obviously when COVID hit, because it was the tech industry, they were most equipped to work from home. It pulled everyone out of downtown. Crime went through the roof. Homelessness went through the roof. Well, I don't know if you know the actual stats right now, but California next year will probably become the third largest economy, overtaking Germany, all as a result of AI. There are currently 78 new billionaires in the city of San Francisco, all as a result of AI. In the last 12 months, $27 billion has gone into San Francisco. It's shocking the amount of money that is pouring into that city. And it has completely changed. Rents are now hitting all-time highs. They've had more homes sell over 20 million in the last year than ever.
Is now a good time to buy in San Francisco?
That's a good question. But I literally remember people be saying, oh, will San Francisco ever come back?
Yeah.
And it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is people, the headlines are always so skewed. Yeah. Oh, did you know that everybody is fleeing California? Everybody's fleeing LA. And I look around, I'm like, not in my area.
Well, that's why California is not without its problems. And one of the problems is the affordability crisis.
Absolutely.
Which is absolutely caused by our historical zoning maps that go back 100 years. And so we have a real problem because we have absolutely the highest salaries, the richest people. But unfortunately, we don't have a middle class is definitely shrinking and housing is astronomical. But as an apartment owner, we tend to benefit from that because we're going to have a generation of renters.
Right. That's right. So, and I do love when you say, you retire. I agree with you completely. I love most of what I do, and I'd like to do more of the things that I love to do because I'm never going to retire from doing the things that I love to do. And I get the same thing as you with real estate, and most of the time and energy that I spend in real estate is on the acquisition, and then right after I acquire it, making sure that I'm doing those things that I wanted to do to reposition it, and then honestly forget about it.
Exactly.
And that's why, other than the fact that I'm innately bad at it, that's one of the reasons why I was never into house flips, because think about it. It's like all this energy, to find the house and, all this energy to figure out, is it going to work? And then, invariably, it costs a bit more than you thought. It takes a bit longer than you thought. And then you exit and you make a chunk of money. And now if you make that chunk of money in a short period of time, now you're paying a massive amount of taxes. And even if that hit is a good amount of money, like something I'm really happy with, where do I start from? Ground zero.
Yeah, and one of the additional challenges with that is you can't control when you're exiting your deal. All of a sudden the market turns on you, and it happens to be when your house is finished, and your profit is quickly gone. If you look right behind us in the Bird Streets, for instance, up here, when they were building, I call them sugar cube houses that were selling for $20, $30, $40 million, the metrics on those homes were that the developers were generally making between $5 and $7 million a house, and now the entire opposite is true. They're losing between 5 and 7 million a house.
Oh my gosh.
Because those projects are multi-year projects, 4 to 5 years to build a house like that.
Yeah, because you're on the hillside.
When they started, everything looked great. And now here we are with ULA. We have fire insurance that is cost prohibitive, and they're now basically white elephants.
You said something that I've got to highlight because it was just said so succinctly. And that is, in a house flip or a development project, you can't control the exit.
No.
And so what's
the market conditions in the exit is what I meant.
Yeah. Well, but see, that puts a different and as many times as I've talked about it, it puts a different and interesting spin on what David and I talk about with this buy and hold strategy. And also, it puts a slightly different spin on, is now a good time to buy? Because we can fully ignore the market or fully ignore where we think the market's going to go, because we never know for sure. So we're not sure. I thought the market was going to correct a long time ago, and it didn't correct. But if you look at the per deal, now you've got the deal looks good. And if it's a buy and hold, we can control the exit. So if something gets super weird and the thing cash flows and we didn't overextend ourselves, we're like, actually, turns out that was a bad time to buy. We didn't know for sure, but we bought right, so we're going to hold. And then it gets great, and then you're like, oh, well, now would be a great time to sell, but we're going to hold anyway. It's like
exactly. Well, as I started this conversation, I never sell.
Right.
So whether my building goes up or down by $1 million or whatever, it's irrelevant. I focus on one thing, and that's what I shared with you before. My mentor taught me: cash flow, and cash flow. And that is what I focus on.
I needed to have your mentor because that is very important. But one of the things that the trade-off that I find is you're going to trade cash flow. That's why I've got you, because I know if I say something you disagree with, you'll give it to me. Cash flow, I think, can run in the opposite direction of equity growth.
Yeah, opposite direct. Well, equity growth will increase cash flow. Yes, a percentage return on your equity would drop. Yes.
But what I mean, and so I'll break that down because even though you agreed with me, I might say it the way I really meant it. I'll see if you still agree. And that is, so I'll give you this example. I use this rule of thumb that doesn't work, but I use it because it's such easy math and it's a starting point. That's 1%, the 1% rule, so it's like 1%, can you get 1% per month of the purchase price? And in LA, you can't get it. Okay. So it would be, $1 million purchase, 1% is 10,000, 10,000 a month in rent. You're good. Okay. Very good. You're not going to get that in LA. Okay. So lo and behold, my fiance has a house. Her mom, when her mom passed away, it went to her, honey, what do you think the house is worth? She says, well, I think about 200 grand. I go, well, we looked into it. It's worth about 240. Well, what can you rent it for? 2,800. So I'm like, okay, wait a second. You had a $240,000 asset. Now, 1% of that per month is 2,400. She's at 2,800. She's exceeding the 1% rule. In Kalamazoo, same thing.
Yeah.
Laramie, Kalamazoo.
Yeah.
Okay. So question, like, why don't David and I run to Kalamazoo? And the answer is, her mom bought the house 10 years ago, paid it all off, no mortgage, but she bought it at like 200, 10 years. There's no appreciation.
But in addition, how much does a refrigerator cost in Kalamazoo?
I know.
How much does a refrigerator cost in LA with a much higher rent?
It costs very fractionally more in LA.
So your repairs and maintenance in proportion to your rents, even though the only reason you're getting that 1% in Kalamazoo is you have a very low house valuation.
Yeah.
However, when you go to refurbish that house after the tenant moves out with new carpeting, new painting, new dishwasher, new refrigerator, and all your appliances, your turnover costs are going to be pretty close to what they are in LA, maybe 80%. And yet in LA, your rental on that house might be $10,000. So you're going to recoup those costs faster.
Right.
So what you're looking at is a very superficial way of looking at it, not taking into consideration repairs and maintenance.
I'm going to have to watch my own episode because this is yet another point that, like, even though I knew it, you put it in a way that is very different, and that is that because the cost of the house, because if you want to do it mathematically, which I know our listeners hate, but I look at it as numerator and denominator. So the denominator is the cost of the house. So now you've got the denominator is $200,000. Let's say to make the thing very simple, right? And now you've got, let's say you need to make $20,000 worth of repairs.
Exactly.
So now you've got 20,000 over 200,000. You've got a 10% of the cost of the building to do the repairs.
Exactly.
And when I bought my house, which I appreciate you coming out and looking at it prior to the buy. I mean, so many things were wrong with it that I needed $200,000 to get it up to just even really sellable level. But $200,000 on a $4.5 million house it's nothing.
Yeah.
So now it was really whatever, it was 4,650, so then I go 4,650 plus the 200. Now it takes me to 4,850. The house is roughly actually 4,850 square feet. So I'm paying exactly $1,000 a square foot after I fix everything.
Yeah.
So now I've got a totally fixed thing at $1,000 a square feet with a phenomenal view. Yeah. And then I go to my realtor friend who works with developers all over the place, and he's like, yeah, there's nothing you can get with a view like that for under $1,200 a square foot. So that's how I knew I'm $1 million ahead. Yeah. So those numerator denominator, that's a very interesting way. I don't know why I never thought of the fact that your repairs cost so much more in Kalamazoo and
it's
in
a price in
Laramie.
proportion to the rent you're collecting as they do in California.
That's right. You can look at it as a proportion of the rent, which is an even better way.
It's
income.
For instance, my Malibu beach house right now is renting to a person who lost their house. Actually, it's an interesting story. I rented to the people who sold me my Beverly Hills house 25 years ago.
Wow. And
full circle there, I got burned out in the Palisades, and they rented my Malibu house for $40,000 a month. And $40,000 a month takes care of a lot of repairs.
So
if my refrigerator goes or my dishwasher goes, which we've had some things, I think the air conditioning had to be replaced. No big deal.
Right.
So what? How much is a new compressor? $4,000. How much does the compressor cost in Kalamazoo?
Maybe $3,500.
Okay.
Right.
There you go.
Right. And so now you got $3,500. Now you got $4,000 against $40,000. Right. And now it costs a little less in Kalamazoo. Now I've got $3,500 against $2,800.
Exactly.
It's over 100% of what you lose.
That's why I use that example.
Yeah. You lose whatever 120% of 1 month's rent, whereas you're losing 4 over 40, so you're losing 10% of one.
Exactly, and this is what happened to me every time I got out of the LA market. I would get into some market where everything seemed like looked like this is an amazing deal. I'm going to have this great cash flow, and then all of a sudden I'd have vacancies and turnovers, and I got really burned out in San Bernardino one time. Big units, everybody was on welfare, and when those units would roll, oh my gosh, carpeting, all of it cost me a fortune. So the thing could never make any money. The only way I made money was when I sold it. I think I made, like your friend in Palm Springs, I made a couple bucks on the sale.
Right. And that is the difference. David and I started at approximately the same time, roughly the same time, buying real estate. And I built this portfolio in Pittsburgh. And, if I built the same portfolio in LA, I would have way less units, far fewer units, and the value would just be like
enormous.
Well,
because if you look at LA rents over time, I bought my first apartment building in 1989. I bought my first house. I bought my first condo when I was in college. Then I rolled it into I bought a house in 1986, and I must have been 24, 25 years old. And that house went up in value pretty well over 2-year period. And then I decided to rent it out in 1031 it. And I 1031 it into a small apartment building in West Hollywood, which I still own to this day.
I love it.
And I paid $510,000 for that property. And today the property grosses $200,000 a year. And it has no mortgage.
Look at the rate of return.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
And I'll never sell it.
And you know what? I was starting to think back, and I was trying to remember when I bought my first piece of real estate, and I'm telling you, I think it's 1989.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Funny. Yeah.
I'll have to get back and get the exact date.
Yeah,
But
I was
it
asked
wasn't
the other
1989. It was 1990.
Well, it came up the other day because I'm putting a new loan on this acquisition I just did, and I had to go over my real estate schedule.
They want to know how many years.
Yeah, they asked it. They said, what was your year of purchase and what'd you pay for it? And it's on your real estate schedule. And that's what she really got me thinking, because I was throwing out these incredibly low prices. Oh yeah, I bought that building for $320,000. I paid $575 for that, $550 for that. I mean, you can't buy a studio condo for those.
No.
And I was buying 12 and 15 unit buildings.
Yep. So we've dispelled dispelled the rumor of, is now a good time to buy? And my answer is it a good deal to buy? Are you buying things that are off market, or are you buying things that are on market?
On market. Now let's get into the 2 buildings that I just acquired.
David and I deal in a real estate sales environment, and the number of people that are out there looking for a quote steal are enormous. And when David says that he bought something on the market, most of you already know this, I'm going to say it anyway. That means that this property was marketed to everybody who's interested in an investment in Los Angeles. It's innumerable amount of people have looked at this property. And when David is the successful buyer on that property, it means that he has paid at least $1 more than anybody else in the whole market did. And that is by definition overpaying.
That's true.
Right?
That is
so
true.
I want to stop lying in the
That's great.
sand.
That's a very good point.
Stop lying in the sand.
Yeah.
Every time you buy a market property, you have paid more than anyone else is willing to pay at that moment in time. And that's the way I bought most of mine. And people that are looking to make real money in real estate do not need a steal.
Yeah. And let's get into the details of the deal and how I look at buildings. I typically buy legacy properties. And that means they're multi-generational. And like when I get really excited when I see that headline in the listing that says first time on the market in 50 years, first time on the market in 40 years, because grandpa was into, we bought buildings. Generally, they were immigrants. They bought buildings. They never sold them. The kids may or may not have kept the building, but the grandchildren have absolutely no desire to be landlords, nor do they want to pick up 1/6 or 1/10 of the cash flow with their cousins. So these properties will frequently hit the market. As a matter of fact, predominantly, they're pretty much what comes on the market today, unless it's a distressed sell, because why would you sell if your asset is performing and it's in California in a good market? So as go on.
No. So that's great. Legacy purchase.
Legacy purchase. So I'm a detail person. Paul will verify
For
this.
sure.
I get very much into the numbers and the details. So this building came on the market on DeLongpre, which is a wonderful street between Sweetser and Harper in West Hollywood, just below the Tower Bar and Grill and the hotel. It came on the market. I drove by it, and it really, I can say this, properties wink at me. And I knew I was going to own it.
Wow.
And first time on the market, and it said it's 60 years. And so I set up a tour. They were asking, I think, $5.2 million for the property. Little overpriced. I walked the property.
It's always overpriced.
Always overpriced when they first come on the market. So I knew the agent. I walked the property. I liked the property. I told him I'm, kind of interested in the property, but I kept an eye on it. Well, wouldn't you know, within about 3 weeks, and a building across the street came on the market. Completely different owners, also a legacy asset. 50-year. This one was a 40-year ownership. Different broker. And I went, oh my gosh. And I literally got excited because one building was 15 units and one was 13 units. Both are below 16 units, and 16 units requires you to have an on-site. So I had an opportunity, which I spotted immediately, of acquiring approximately 28 units across the street from each other, right next to each other, which is basically one building. You just got to walk across the street without having an on-site, ideally located between me and the head of my property management. So I approached both agents, and one thing I've learned through the years, do not represent yourself. You will not get the deal, and you are cheating yourself of potentially getting a good investment. So of course, I let each of the agents represent me. We wrote we wrote both offers virtually at the same time, 2-week close, all cash. One was a reverse exchange. And for those of you who don't know what a reverse exchange is, it's where you acquire your 1031 exchange property prior to selling the asset you're going to be trading. You can do this if you have all cash. So I literally tied up both properties simultaneously with 2-week closings, 1 week for inspections, 1 week to close. This allowed me to get the properties for, I think the one for 5.2 I got for 4.7, and the one across the street, they wanted 3.9, I got for 3.5. And that might have been after some negotiations on some repairs. I closed the deals. Cash on cap, there were solid cap rates at 5.3%. The way I look at cap rates is I look at the current cost of funds. I look at the current 10-year treasury or the muni bond rate. That's my alternative. If I have cash, I'll be sitting in treasuries or munis. And I look at buildings as a bond, and a bond that continues to throw off a better return every year.
I'm going to unpack some of that.
Sorry, I went a little quick.
That was good. No, that was good. First of all, just again, some listeners are like very seasoned, some aren't. And this goes right back to knowing your area, because I invest in this area too. And like the 16, I wasn't sure at what point. And when you say on-site, what David is saying is that you have to have a manager who lives on site, which that kills a unit.
Yeah.
So if you buy 15, you don't have to, but if you buy 16, you're down to 15 anyway,
exactly.
Right? But you're paying for 16.
Yeah.
And then when you buy two across the street from each other, one 15, one 13, now you're at 28 units, but you still don't have the on-site manager.
Exactly.
So that's where—
That got me really excited.
Yeah. So that's where you've got that savings. The other thing is you described some streets, and you also said, it's just below the Tower Bar, which of course I know, but for people who aren't in LA, it makes me excited because I'm looking right down the road, and you've got like the Chateau Marmont, which is like famous, iconic, hotel. This is an iconic— Sunset Strip is iconic anyway. This is an iconic section of an iconic section. And to be able to buy properties that are already, sort of throwing at 5.3%. Now everyone had to— what they were looking at is they were looking at your $5.2 million advertised price. They were looking at your 3.9 advertised price. And everybody is either passed on it or they're going like, I don't know.
Actually, there were multiples on one of the buildings. One of the buildings went into multiples. It was a multiple offer situation. The all cash 2-week close pretty much, and letting the agent rep me pretty much sewed that up.
And that also is a big lesson to learn. And that is, if you're a buyer and you think, I have the edge here because it's a tough market out there, I actually want to buy. If you're really getting a great deal, you want to be the best buyer that you could possibly be, so that seller really wants to sell to you. And that was part of the story, that because when I bought my house, it was listed at $4,750. Obviously, I think it turned out to be a great deal. Finally, somebody came in what caused me to move is they came in at a 4,750 all cash. I was still able to get it at 4,650. And the way I did that was be a great buyer. And how do you do that? I went in and I said to them, hey, look we both know who your buyer is at all cash.
Yeah.
And they're famous. They're not buying it for themselves. They're buying it for their kid. And you're never going to talk to the famous buyer ever. You're going to talk to their management company. Their management company is paid to screw you up. Yeah. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to offer you $100,000 less. It's not going to be all cash, but I can pull the loan contingency. So that makes me a better buyer, maybe not as good as cash. And I said to him, here's what I'll do. I'm going to do every inspection that the famous guy is going to do, that his management company is going to do. I might even do a few more inspections. I want 10 days to complete the inspections. I give you my word. I will not ask for $1 back. However, I may walk away from the deal. So in 10 days, you'll know you've got your 4,650 or not. And then go ahead and take your 4,750 all cash. It'll still be there waiting for you. And trust me, given the state of the house, which is bad, this is going to be a nightmare for you. And the seller just went, okay, let's go.
That's fantastic.
Just be a great buyer. The other thing that you said was you are obviously you're a broker. Obviously, you can do the deal. You can do the deal for free, right? And when people try to chisel a realtor on a commission, if they're able to chisel a realtor on a commission, that is a sign that it's not a great deal. Because they would hand, because here's what a realtor does. Hey, I'm repping an investment property. This is, wow, I look at so many investment properties, and this one, boy, if I had the money, I would buy this myself. So this is a good one. So who is that realtor going to run to? That realtor is going to run to a client that, number one, they know is going to close and isn't going to be a pain, and number two, that's going to pay them full commission. And if they have another buyer that's going to chisel their commission, and they have a buyer over here that's not going to chisel their commission, where is that great deal going to go? And so it's as counterintuitive as it is. I feel like if you're not paying full commission, you're not getting a great deal.
I absolutely agree. In the case of these two buildings, the agents representing each of the building are, both of them have been in the business 20 years. They're well known. They're one of the top 5 commercial guys in the city. And because of the way we closed the deal, who do you think the first person? One of them has already approached me. Do you want another building?
Yeah.
And before he brings it to market, he's all over me. And I want those guys out there handpicking my deals for me.
Absolutely.
It's not worth it to me to expand on what you said, Paul. If I am allowed to participate or rep myself and I get the building, I didn't get a great deal.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because they need to incentivize, and the realtor commission is such a small fraction of the building. Like, the guy that repped me on the purchase of that house works for us. The person, of course, who repped me on the purchase of my house works for us, and he had another all cash buyer. He's not gonna come to me and say, hey, are you sure you don't want it? I told him in advance, you can have the commission here. You can list my house for the sale. He's looking at 2 sides minimum. So he's getting double the commission. And he expected me to come and chisel him on the and there's no way I was going to do it.
Exactly. Like you said, be a great buyer.
Yeah. Be a great buyer. Be a great buyer is the way to. It's one of the gateways of acquiring wealth in real estate.
Yeah, and then another thing that I want to add before we move on with respect to these two buildings, and to expand on what you said. What you said, the most time you get excited is during the acquisition phase and after you buy a building because you do all the work, and that's exactly what I do. So, for instance, when I'm analyzing a property, I was looking at these buildings. One of the buildings in particular had really high plumbing bills, and whenever I see that, and especially see it with a legacy asset, what that tells me is the people who inherited the property don't want to do any kind of capital improvements, and they'd rather pay a plumber to come out and do a partial repipe.
Yeah.
And let me just make this really clear to everyone out there, because this is something I've learned through many years. There's no such thing as a partial repipe. All you are doing is burning money. You do a full repipe or you don't do a repipe. No, they can't come in and work with what you've done, because it's all behind walls. And so therefore, if your plumbing bills are running higher than they should be, or if you have, it's time, and the building has not been repiped, it's time just to bite the bullet, repipe it, and forget about it for the rest of your life.
What does it cost to repipe?
You got 3 bids. I took that one for $123,000, and that was on the 15-unit building.
So $123,000. Again, it's the same numerator denominator thing. $123,000 just to repipe on a building that say that even costs $1 million. You're now talking about 12.3% of the purchase price. And then all you have to do is, if it's just double that, it's cutting that in half. Now you have a $2 million bill, and now it's only 6 point whatever it would be, 5 or whatever.
Well, one of the things I pride myself on is my buildings, I try to operate them at very low expenses. Well, how do I operate with low expenses? My roofs are current. My plumbing is always updated. My electrical is always upgraded. And if you think about the components of a building, if you take care of roofing, plumbing, electrical, and you take care of all these things, what are you repairing? Appliances you're changing out, condensers. And so that's how I control my. I have friends and some clients who will bleed a building of cash flow and refuse to make these capital improvements, and I just do not understand it.
The only wealthy relative I had was my dad's first cousin. He was very wealthy, and he built a giant portfolio of real estate in Pittsburgh, and he never fixed anything. And in part, I'll bet you one of the reasons why was because the cost of these repairs were so large relative to
what he was collecting in Pittsburgh.
That's right. Relative to, and I like the way you look at that as relative to the revenue, which is the truest way. And I always look at the cost relative to the value of the building.
Both. Add that, and for instance, for those of you who don't know, California, I'm sure all of you know, is going through a major insurance crisis right now.
Yes.
So when we procured these 2 buildings and we put them on our insurance policy, first thing they want to see is a loss history run on both buildings. And both buildings actually had claims within the last 5 years, which is really unusual because, like in my history, I have 0 claims. That being said, one of the claims was a plumbing disaster in one of the buildings, and they had a $30,000 or $40,000 claim on their insurance. And as soon as I saw that, it just reaffirmed, you're replumbing this building day one.
Right. And if you get the right insurer, you could say, hey, you know what? I know this loss run includes this major plumbing issue. I'm going to repipe the building.
No, that's what they asked. They actually asked the question, what are the plans for not to happen in the future? And
then you go, well, I'm going to repipe the building, and they go, okay, great. We're gonna write it at this lower price, and you have to repipe the building in order to have that lower price.
These are why you have to take care of your properties, in my mind. Otherwise,
I agree.
Yeah. And the thing other thing that people a lot of times don't understand, land appreciates. Buildings depreciate.
Right.
And the only way to avoid the building depreciating at a greater rate is to maintain it to fairly current standards. Of course, you can't keep it completely current, but you can fix the roof. You can put a new roof. You can update the plumbing and put L copper piping in, and you can change the electrical panels and the boxes. And your building, then you've minimized the physical depreciation which takes place.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get the tax write-off for the
depreciation. By the way, with the new big beautiful bill, that plumbing bill of $123,000, I'm writing all of it off in year one.
100%.
100%.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So 2025 is going to look really good.
Yeah, and that's through acquiring these 2 properties.
Do you want to get into the actual cost seg details?
Absolutely.
All right. So I do a cost seg on each building. I've already done a preliminary study. And the one building I'm buying for approximately $4.7 million, that one is going to throw a write-off of about $800,000 year one. The second building, which I'm doing the reverse 1031 tax-free exchange, due to the fact I have a slightly lower basis based on my gain on the other property, is going to throw off about $600,000. So between the two buildings, I'll end up with a year one write-off of $1.4 million, which is I can offset any K1 income anywhere.
Yeah,
against.
absolutely. That's amazing, and that's what my high income earning friend. That's what his friend was telling him, was like, look at the massive write-offs, and so yes, you got a $1.4 million.
$1.4 million. I can offset all K1 income against that. And I have a lot of K1s.
What about W-2 income? Can you offset W-2 income?
No, can't offset W-2, but because I'm in real estate, I really don't have too much W-2 income.
Right. That makes sense. So, and when you said cost seg, what you're referring to is cost segment
segregation analysis.
Segregation, yeah.
Analysis.
Cost segregation, and basically segregating that portion of the asset which goes into 27 and a half year.
Anything less than 27 and a half years. So we take down windows, flooring, cabinets, fixtures, appliances, window coverings. All of the building is taken into pieces, and then they're given a life between 2, 5, 15, and 27 and a half. Anything less than 27 and a half, meaning basically 20 years and below, can all be taken in year one.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But bear in mind, though, you are lowering the basis tax-wise for your purchase price. So when I take that million, I think my cumulative purchases were 8.2 million, and I take that million for a write-off, my new basis is 6.8 million. So if I were to sell tomorrow at the price I paid, I would have what's called recapture.
Yeah, recapture.
At 1.4 million. But because I never sell, I really don't care.
And that is why this great tax write-off, this great tax efficient thing, it just does not apply to people that are flipping real estate, because whatever you write off, it's going to come right back at you.
Well, you wouldn't cost seg a flipper.
No.
Yeah, there'd be no incentive.
It doesn't
make have recapture immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you might cost seg it.
I mean, it works really well
happens.
for someone like myself who never sells.
Yeah.
I don't care what the basis is on my properties because I'm never selling.
The one time that you avoid tax, most tax things are pay now or pay later. Okay, so 1031 delays the payment. Depreciation delays the payment, but recapture gets that back.
Yeah.
But you get the use of the money all that time. 1031, you carry forward.
Yeah.
And so the one time that there's more than one time, but I would have to research it. There's not many times, but one time that you really you avoid the tax entirely is on death, because when you bequeath it, maybe I said that
to
right.
your spouse.
Yeah. Oh, is it to spouse?
Well,
only?
no, it's only spouse only. But let me elaborate on that a little bit.
Or to your kids.
No. Kids, it'll trigger tax if you exceed the lifetime exemption, which is currently $30 million for a couple.
Okay.
It'll be taxed at 40% for federal purposes. But where the ultimate,
if it exceeds 30 million.
If it exceeds 30 million, if your assets exceed 30 million,
that's a pretty good bite.
Yeah, it's a pretty good base. But I'll expand on for those of you who don't know, my father was a bank president and my mother was a CPA. So I kind of was born on third base and made it to home plate from the standpoint of I understood this stuff at a very a basic level at a very young age. So one of the things that came to me with this crazy bonus depreciation passed in that big, beautiful bill, which is completely unfair to the average person and advantageous for real estate people, is someone like myself who's just been married. I just got married to a person who's significantly younger than myself. Well, if I were unfortunately passed away tomorrow, he's going to get what's called a step up in basis. He'll pay no tax. He'll absolutely pay no estate taxes. He will get all of my assets and they will reset to market value. And he'll be able to start traditional depreciation over. He won't get the bonus depreciation, but all that depreciation, which I've taken year one, he'll get it handed it back to him.
That's right.
And be able to shelter all of the income at current market values.
Right.
It is so extraordinarily unfair to the average person.
Well, and let me put that in real a real money example, which I think will make it easy to understand, and that is, I buy a piece of real estate for $1 million. I sit on it for a long time. That piece of real estate is now worth $10 million. So my basis would be $1 million. Let's forget about depreciation for a minute. My basis, it would be $1 million. And then I would have $9 million of taxable gain. If I die and I give that to a spouse or to a child, because it's still underneath
Less than 30 million.
Less than 30 million.
Yeah.
So were I to pass away and give that $10 million building to my daughter, her basis, whether she sells it or keeps it, it doesn't matter. Her basis is now $10 million.
Exactly.
So now, let's say she holds it and it goes to 12 million. Instead of paying 11 million in gain, she's only paying 2 million in gain.
And her depreciation
Starts
resets
over.
at the reset. Doesn't just start over. It resets at market value.
Wow.
You only paid $1 million for the building. Her depreciation starts at 10.
Wow. Yeah.
It is so. I have, for those of you who don't know, I'm a liberal, and I'm very much into the progressive tax code. And it's not. These are not fair things. That being said, I take advantage of them because I'm in real estate, and I know how to. I know how to.
Well, playing, I and maybe it's just a justification. I mean, I do the same thing. I look at certain laws and go, geez, that doesn't seem fair. It's not a law that I would pass myself,
Exactly.
but it is passed, and you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's go. I mean, it was so many years ago, but I was with my mother of my child, my ex, and they passed this farm bill that allowed automobiles that were more than 5,000 pounds.
6,000 pounds.
Oh, it was 6,000.
Sorry to
you
correct
remember.
you.
I love it. No, bring it. I love it.
It's still the current tax code.
Yeah. So a vehicle that weighs more than 6,000 pounds, they were sort of calling it
Commercial, but technically it falls into the commercial.
Yeah.
Vehicle.
And so guess what happens? The car manufacturers, they have a 5,800 pound SUV.
Oh, they push
and they
it
go,
over.
you know what? Let's make it 6,001 pounds, because that'll put you in a whole. You'll get a whole different tax situation with
Yeah,
that.
we just purchased an exotic car for a significant amount of dollars, and we're writing the entire thing off year one. We're taking the bonus again. This bonus depreciation applies more than just real estate, but applies to research and development. Companies can write off computers, desks, whatever, and including automobiles.
Yeah. I mean, so again, essentially you are rewarding someone for driving something that is by nature less energy efficient because it weighs more, and you're getting a tremendous tax break. And so I was all in favor of my ex buying the 6,010 pound
car
BMW SUV.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, and we'll touch on this just a little more before we move on. The one reason this bothers me somewhat is you think about a real estate billionaire, say they're worth $5 billion, like Steve Wynn. Mrs. Wynn just passed away, and Steve owns. I don't think they formally got divorced, and so Steve now is getting a step up in basis on billions of dollars worth of real estate. And so he's resetting, not paying any taxes, and getting all that depreciation. And the government's going to get no tax. He'll pay less taxes post her demise than he did the previous year.
Wow.
So those are exaggerations, but these are just some of the things that are unfair and are leading to our incredible deficits.
One of the things I want to find out is how do you underwrite the building?
Okay,
so
go on.
I want to say this to you about underwriting, because I want you to tell me. I want you to educate me on this. I get these proposals just like you do from commercial realtors, and it's this 12-page prospectus or more, and it's got all these numbers and spreadsheets. And I went to business school, and I've been in real estate a long time, and it's got to be more impatience than actually inability. And I look at that, I'm like, what is this? You know, like I can't, you know, I want to know what's the cost of the building. Okay. What is the cost of because generally I'm buying a value add. So I don't buy something that's done, has no room in it. So I'm buying a, you know, probably substandard building in a very nice area. And I go, okay, great. This is the purchase price. How much is it going to cost to get it from substandard to standard or standard plus? How long is that going to take? And what's it going to be worth afterwards? And if you want to be fancy, you can call it the after renovation value, ARV. And those are three numbers.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world? Why are they sending me these spreadsheets other than to confuse me?
Well, one of the things you're looking at after renovation value, which I never look at. All I care about is cash flow.
After renovation cash flow.
After renovation cash flow. And so when I'm analyzing a property, and I'll give you a few highlights now because I can only talk about the current market conditions here in Los Angeles. I've never shied away from rent control. For those of you who want a little bit of clarification on that, buildings built after 1978 in the city of Los Angeles or even the county of LA are subject to rent control. Or the buildings prior to 78 are subject to rent control. Those buildings built after 78 are free of rent control. So rent control has never bothered me because we have a thing called vacancy decontrol. And vacancy decontrol is when a tenant moves out, which tenants ultimately do, you can take it to market rent. So when I'm looking at a building and I'm looking at a cap rate, even though we may have, we call it loss to lease. Loss to lease means the tenant's paying $1,200 a month. The market rate on that unit is $2,000. So you have a loss to lease of $800 a month. And so that's how you figure what the upside is. So as an example, on the two buildings that I recently purchased, I think those were 5.3 cumulative cap rates. And we had a loss to lease of approximately 30%. That means I have 30% upside. And going in, I have a 5.3% cash flow if I were to pay all cash. That's what a cap rate is. It's the net operating income divided by the purchase price. And that's your return if you paid all cash. And that's how you generally measure commercial assets. So that's 5.3%. And then as people move, which they will, and let me tell you, some of these tenants, one guy I'll tell you this is a cute story. I was looking at one unit and the guy goes, hey, I've got a crack in my bathroom that developed after the earthquake. And I said, what earthquake? And I go, you mean 1994? And I go in and the gentleman had moved into this unit in 1991.
Wow.
And sure enough, I walk in and right through his bathroom shower, there was a crack. And wouldn't you know, we were downstairs in the bathroom. There was a leak.
Wow.
The owners had not bothered to correct or make this repair. Day one, we're tearing out a shower and putting a new shower in.
And one of the reasons why that current owner, the former owner now, right now that you've bought it, one of the reasons why they didn't do it is because, oh, you know what, this guy's rent is not going up. We're not going to fix anything.
Yeah,
it's a bummer. Because sure, you know, now he's had this bother, which is this crack in his shower, and your loss to lease on his particular unit is how much?
That one is $1,700.
Right, massive. Okay, so the loss to lease on his is $1,700. And the likelihood of him moving out is because he's been there so long, he's eventually going to move out. But the likelihood of him moving out is going to be slightly less when you fix his shower because now he's got a nice shower.
That's true. But the way I look at it is not just his shower. I have a unit downstairs, which happens to be renovated.
Wow.
And the ceiling, you have mold. God knows what damage has taken place over a 30-year period with a leaky shower. So I do not tolerate I'm going to change the subject real quick. In the city of LA, we have annual or every other year, they do a full inspection of your buildings. They walk every unit and you get what's called a deficiency and what repairs they want to see made. Before we have these inspections, we actually do a pre-inspection and we walk every unit. And we take care of smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, anything that's leaking, anything that looks dangerous or hazardous. We take care of all of it. So when we have our inspections, we come out clean.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that it's counterintuitive. And the number of people that I would talk to that say that they will not invest in rent control, they're running away from rent control. Well, here's the thing. It has to make sense when you're doing your underwriting.
Yeah.
You're doing your underwriting. You're saying, hey, this is a legacy purchase. It's in a phenomenal area. Obviously, if it has, I can tell you right now, if it has a crack in the shower that, that goes all the way back to 1994, it's not particularly well cared for. And I know you have that all worked in because you've done all your inspections. And, and you're going to go ahead and fix a guy's shower that's been there for 30 years because you're not flipping this building. You're not, eventually that tenant is going to be happy with you, more happy than for sure the last person. And then if he ever wants to leave, it's not going to be vindictive. It's not going to,
Exactly. Well, Paul, and to add on to that, in this particular case, believe it or not, that building was amazingly maintained. They had updated all the electrical panels, all the electrical, replumbed it. They had done everything. They had remodeled several of the units to condo level renovations.
Wow.
They just were ignoring this guy because he'd
been there so long.
He'd been so long. So among all these units, you had this dilapidated unit with the building's amazing. Cameras, electric gate.
Yeah.
It goes back to your point. They just had no interest in making any repairs in that gentleman's unit.
That's right. Crazy. And so at the same time that I do not shy away from rent control, I'm also not, and I know you're not, the type of person that's like, I'm not, when I buy a place that's rent control, you've got the, 80-year-old man or whatever that's been in there 25 years, I'm not looking to push them out.
No.
It's bad karma. It's bad whatever. They'll go when they go.
Yeah.
And I loved honestly, it's the first time. I'm shocked because I do this stuff, I look at this stuff all the time. It's the first time that I've heard that term, loss to lease. Oh. And measuring that loss to lease and knowing that eventually everybody moves out.
Yeah, and let me go back to rent control for a second because I am not a proponent of rent control. I think it stifles development. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. However, I am in favor of rent control for seniors because I do not feel, based on increasing rents, that the elderly population should have to move and relocate.
Absolutely.
So that's where, and I do think some reasonable caps like the California 10% is a reasonable amount for annual increases. But I do believe the buildings have to have a natural move in, move out, so people are incentivized to improve the buildings and keep them current. But I do believe that elderly people should be protected. Where it's become where it's crossed the line is when you're de-insensitizing people to move out of where they are based on the fact that they're paying virtually no rent. And in many cases, they're making hundreds of thousands a year, and they're actually cheating themselves out of a better life experience because they're choosing to live into something far less than they can afford simply because they don't want to pay more rent.
When I first moved to Los Angeles, I moved into a building on Ocean Avenue. Near the California Incline. I mean, spectacular location. I moved in with my brother. He had a two-story oceanfront unit, and the building was totally dilapidated because it was rent control.
Was that Ocean Towers?
No. It was just north of California, the California Incline. I can almost remember I think it was 1024 Ocean.
Yeah, I know several of those buildings. They were rent controlled. I have friends that lived in there and were paying $300, $600 a month rent.
He was paying a little more than that, but it was still so far below the market value. And that de-incentivized, first of all, nobody wanted to move out. Secondly, the landlord just did not fix anything. So it was
You create slums.
Yeah, you're creating slums in a great area.
Yeah.
And you know what? My brother at that time was a very highly compensated medical doctor that just doesn't make sense for rent control.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. You're basically you're forcing the private sector to become a public housing supplier.
Even in instances that it makes absolutely no sense, even for public welfare, it doesn't make sense to have that available to people that are making a bunch of money.
No, people making a bunch of money. Now, I'm a big proponent of affordable housing,
of course,
because as we displace more and more affordable units with putting in new developments at much higher prices, we need to replace those housings and can't expect people just to increase their commutes.
Right.
So I'm definitely in favor of affordable housing.
Yeah.
And that's affordable housing is where you make 80% of the median salary in the area. So affordable housing can actually apply to people making $60,000-$70,000 a year if they're in a very high cost area. You
really went through the purchase. We did some strategy pieces. Tell me more about underwriting the purchases.
So when I take a look at a building, the first thing is the first rule of thumb in all real estate is location, location, location. And I ask myself the question, if I were in my 20s, would I want to live here? And it also answers the question of whether I want to own this asset forever. Because generally, if it's someplace I want to live, I also wouldn't mind owning it forever because I like to live in nice places.
Sure.
And so these are the questions I ask myself. So these two buildings I just bought on de Longpre, it's a beautiful street. It doesn't go through. It's historical buildings on all sides. It's got wide grassways. You see people walking the dogs, and it's just got that charm of the historical Los Angeles. So that's why I'm owning this, and I'll own it forever.
I love it.
So as I look at a building, I break it into, as I said when we started this conversation, I look at my other buildings which I own, which are similar.
Right.
And I take the building apart and I look at the electrical meters, I look at the breakers, I look at the plumbing, I look at the roof, I look at basically all systems. And then I pencil, when I'm doing my analysis, I add whatever that costs. For instance, these two buildings, one building has to be repiped, that's $123,000. I had two units, each building had one unit that needed to be completely remodeled, and that's probably going to cost me $20,000 a unit. I had to replaster a pool on the north building, that's going to come in around $8,000. And that's basically all I had to do for these assets. So I think I budgeted around $200,000 for the two buildings. And I just factor that in, and particularly with the with the bonus depreciation, it's like, just more write-off.
Right.
Of course, it's a capital investment, but I'll take the write-off in year one, and then I won't have a problem. Then the phone isn't ringing at 3 a.m. for us to go with an emergency repair.
Location, you find a similar building, and by that, especially around where we live, one of the things you're doing is you're looking at what year it was built, right?
Yeah, when I look at similar building, we have things here called like tuck under parking, and we have all sorts of different variables. So it usually does go back to about approximately year built, but then even within a year built, you have flat roof versus pitch roof. Pitch roofs obviously last a lot longer. So you look at all these, you take the buildings apart, and then I pull the analysis of my other buildings, and then that's when I can really spot where a building is operating inefficiently. And for instance, this one building, the plumbing expenses were historically running $20,000-$30,000 a year, which is ridiculous. Why would you spend $25,000 a year for plumbing repairs when the cost to repipe is $123,000?
Right. And then it's probably leaking water.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
It's a disaster. You're creating a unhealthy environment. You're going to potentially have insurance claims.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, that's not how I do business.
Yep. How much of this are you relying on your property inspector to point out?
That's a great question, Paul. I don't have a property inspector. What I have is a management team. So one reason I'm able to inspect a property in 7 days is we showed up day one with my head of property management, my plumber, my electrician, my pool guy, my roofer, literally all of my trades. So these are people who actually work on my current buildings and have been employed for me for up to 35 years.
Right.
So the whole team shows up
Right.
because we have one shot at this in my mind. I want to make this as convenient for the tenants and the seller as possible. So as people have been requested to open their apartments for us, we hit it hard. We inspect everything.
Right.
And so I generally have, unless I have to do a follow-up inspection, maybe get a bid or two, I generally will have an idea if I'm going to buy that building within 2 days.
And so you're not using any professional inspectors?
I do not use professional inspectors for professional inspectors. You know the expression cover your ass. All you're going to get is a lengthy report that's going to cite every deficiency because they're going to get paid $1,500. And if they make any mistakes, you're going to sue them.
Right.
So I would much rather rely on the guys who've worked for me for 35 years and their opinion of the conditions. And for instance, my plumber looked at it and I said, what's the status of the plumbing? He goes, it's mixed. You've got galvanized, you've got some M piping, you've got this. And for those of you who don't know, M copper plumbing is it's a cheaper form of plumbing and it ends up getting little leaks. It doesn't do well with hot water. It's okay for office buildings. It's not good for residential. And so you want L plumbing. I know that's a lot of detail. So anyway, I asked my guy, what's the status? And he goes, whenever they say mix, it's okay. We got to repipe.
And you know what? And it, as much as you know, I still think that the resources are available really to anyone. So you have a team that works for you, and I understand that. And I would still go to my friends, or friends that own similar properties, or find, there's still a way. Or if you have a great relationship with your realtor, you say, hey, give me somebody who can really, what are the trades that can help me?
Okay, if we're talking to the average person and not somebody who has, I've got, I don't know, I think we have 400 doors in 21 buildings. I'm a little different because I have these resources. An average investor out there wouldn't have those resources. And in that case, they do need to rely on a professional property inspector. But what they're going to have to do then is they're going to have to take that property inspection report and do subsequent investigations.
Absolutely.
So they're going to have to read that report with somebody who knows how to interpret it and be able to differentiate stuff that's unimportant with what's important,
right?
Because they are two completely different things.
Right.
Then you're going to have to say, okay, we have to do follow-up inspections, and then you're going to bring out electricians, plumbers, roofers, and all the people that I bring out day one.
Right.
You're going to have to bring out as a follow-up to your inspection report.
Right. And if we break it down to like a 4-unit building, and this is your first go round, I want this episode to really, really educate and definitely not scare away, Yeah. So you have, you're going at a 4-unit or maybe a duplex for sure. You can get a great property inspection, and there's going to be, a lot of stuff is going to work just fine. And that's the checkoffs. And the ones that are like, well, it doesn't work fine or whatever, that's where you go to your trades, and you just have to ask around.
Absolutely.
And ask around and get a great plumber. Listen, I didn't have a residential plumber that knew how to, be a forensic plumber because the house I bought had crazy problems. So I ran around like, hey, who's a great plumber who could really figure stuff out? And I get recommendations, have people come over and look at it. So these are resources that really, a first-time investor could do. But I still like the underwriting, because you're looking at what are all the things that have a short shelf life. So if you have a roof, they go, well, it's not that bad, but it probably only has 5 years on it. You're like, okay.
Do you really want to wait till El Nino to re-roof? As a matter of fact, when you do that, every roofer's busy.
Oh yeah, that's right. Get the roofers now.
The time to roof is the middle of, right now it's 100 degrees here in Los Angeles. Now is when you re-roof.
Yeah, no rain.
You'll get a better price. You'll get them out tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, right. Exactly. You
really want to tarp over your roof in the middle of a El Nino. But getting back to the average person, if I were going to start over, I absolutely wouldn't have all these resources, so I would have to use a building inspector. But I would say this, and this is where I made mistakes. When I bought my first house up on Mount Olympus, I paid $320,000 for it. I'll never forget, my mother said to me, did you check the roof? And I'm like, whatever, not really. when it rained, the first rainstorm, I had a tile roof, but we had this addition that was flat. It was raining in the house.
Right.
The water was coming in everywhere. Subsequent to that, I got a roofer out there. We re-roofed that section. I think it was like $2,000. It wasn't even crazy.
Right.
But I didn't know any better. I was new to this.
Right.
And I literally didn't follow what my own mother said. Just check the roof. And so these are the things that everybody, if you're going to be a property owner and you want to get into this line of work, you have got to, like any other thing, you have got to educate yourself what you're investing in. So you need to know the basics of plumbing, just, basic L piping versus M plumbing, copper versus galvanized.
Yeah.
And you just need to learn some basics. And now with AI, it is so easy.
So easy.
Because the resources are there.
Right.
So you need to understand, so you can understand when things are being communicated to you. The biggest mistakes we make sometimes in real estate is professionals are talking to us and we pretend to know what we don't know because we don't want to appear stupid.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with saying, could you educate me on that? Could you give me a quick,
I mean, just so you know, all the years I've been doing it, I certainly know the difference between copper and galvanized for sure. And I didn't know the difference between L and M. It's the first time I've heard it.
Oh.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And maybe I should know or whatever.
The reason that's important, Paul, is when you get your bids for repiping.
Yeah, because then they're going to bid you. They're going to
what are you bidding? You better. It's a minor detail. And just so you know, I know this is getting really into the weeds. Prior to 1995. M was acceptable in repiping and new construction here in Los Angeles.
Right.
After 1995, they require you to do L because M doesn't do well on hot water. It's okay. M is okay for office buildings that run basically cold water 8 hours a day, not 24/7.
Right.
So it doesn't deteriorate the way M does. L will outlast M. These are the questions you kind of have to understand, or you don't even know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
You'll go with the low bid on a repipe and end up with M copper.
and I use the large language models, ChatGPT, or I've been using Perplexity a lot. And these are the questions you can just ask.
Exactly.
Tell me everything.
Tell me the difference between L and M copper piping, and it will tell you every.
Right.
I wish it existed when we were younger.
Yeah.
I actually would have had to. I had to go out and find out this. Spend actually hours going out and learning this.
Right.
When you need to understand what people are talking about.
Yeah. And I really appreciate this because, again, like I said, we did the whole journey and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, because David's so good with the numbers, and I learned a bunch of stuff today, which I didn't learn in the first episode.
Yeah.
And I also didn't learn in 30 years of buying real estate. So there's a lot to do, a lot to learn. Is there anything else that
I will tell you something. Because I always go back to when I started out, because right now I'm 63 years old, but I still feel like I'm 30.
Right.
And so there's moments where I can go back and I can literally remember, like, oh, this is what I felt like, and this is what I was thinking at that moment when I was doing something. And you also sit there and go, oh, what an idiot, and all the mistakes I made. I wish I knew now. If I were starting out and I was looking at my first acquisition, I would focus on a 2 to 4 unit property.
Yeah. I agree.
That's because you're going to get preferential financing, because up to four units is single family financing, and then look at a building where you can basically live for free. You'll rent 3 units out, you'll live in 1 unit, and if it breaks even,
that's
you're
a good
golden.
buy. Absolutely.
And then you sit on that asset, your neighbor's rents are going to go up, and you eventually will buy your next asset. And that might be a duplex where you're sharing only one other person, and you'll start to build your portfolio that way.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So these are, like I said, the base hit, base hit, base hit.
Yeah.
Do not attempt to go out and hit a home run.
And the base hit and base hit and base hit over time, it gets cumulative.
It's huge.
Yeah. So that when you look back at, it's like, when's the best time to invest in real estate? 10 years ago. When's the second best time? Right now. And that's why I really don't think that, and the example that I used with this woman, which I'm going to interview her, is that it took her to actually get off the sidelines and get into that deal, for her to realize all these different things. And she was lucky that that was not an expensive lesson. It was a lesson in time and energy and effort, but she got educated. She made like 2 cents on the sale, and she sold it when she found that thing that she knew was going to be way different. And then she did that, and you know, again, 2 properties, it's paying all of her living expenses.
That's great. And Paul, if you focus on cash flow,
correct.
It doesn't matter if tomorrow your property drops 10% in value.
It doesn't
doesn't matter, because your cash flow is still your cash flow.
Correct. That's correct. And people will ask me, like, through the last big downturn, I know you're in real estate, are you doing okay? I'm like, you know, I have property in Pittsburgh, and the property I have in LA it's not the highest end. It's good property in good locations. They don't read the New York Times or the LA Times and go, "Wow, times are tough. I'm not going to pay my rent."
Exactly.
They're like, "Wow, I need to pay my rent because I can't afford to go somewhere else."
As a matter of fact, like as I said earlier in the conversation, one of the unfortunate benefits, I guess, in being a landlord is because cost is so prohibitively expensive in this city for housing, the demand for rentals has never been greater. At the same time, it's virtually impossible to build.
Absolutely. So there you go. You've got that scarcity.
Do the math.
Yeah.
All right.
David, thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend.
Really appreciate it.
That was a lot of fun.
Okay.
All righty.